So yeah, there's a long history of UFO and extraterrestrial interest in nuclear technology. So was the interest motivated by a desire to protect the German Antarctic bases from nuclear attacks? So this would make sense. Operation High Jump, there was an attempt to flush out and destroy the German bases there. And so the Germans would have been aware of the development of nuclear weapons and would have been very knowledgeable about the potential for those weapons to be used against them in Antarctica once their bases were known in terms of where they were located. So certainly, I think there is a good reason to believe that the historic UFO interest in nuclear weapons may have been related to the Germans wanting to protect their Antarctic bases from nuclear attacks. Now, according to the information I've discussed in my books, Eisenhower was warned by human-looking extraterrestrials, or Nordics, otherwise known as the Galactic Federation, that he was warned that there was going to be another group that was going to approach the US government and wanted to make a deal, wanted to exchange technology, and warned that there would be a painful future if the Eisenhower administration made that deal. So that was something that back in 2004, when I was doing my initial research in this, I discussed it in my first book on exopolitics, the Eisenhower extraterrestrial agreement at Edwards Air Force Base. And it actually got a write-up in the Washington Post. Peter Carlson, a Washington Post reporter, came and interviewed me and did a feature story that came out in the Washington Post in the style section. It was the cover of the style section, going into the information I had to share about President Eisenhower having this extraterrestrial encounter. Now, unfortunately for me, that I suffered a career setback because of that story. The university I was working at the time did not like that I was getting any kind of press attention. Normally, an academic getting press attention, that's something to be celebrated, but in this case, it wasn't. Eisenhower's second meeting and agreement with an Antarctic German extraterrestrial alliance. This meeting has been discussed by Bill Tompkins, Clark McClellan, Corey Goode, and Vladimir Terzinsky. And they say that this was actually the Germans landing there at Holloman Air Force Base and making an agreement with President Eisenhower, who met them. So as a consequence of that, the Fourth Reich, this breakaway German group that had established a base in Antarctica, that also had bases in South America, where they had a lot of advanced technologies, the German, they began to infiltrate the US military-industrial complex. And this is actually substantiated to a degree by the treatment that German paperclip scientists and others that were being brought in from Germany, the advantages that they were given over American scientists. So in Jim Ma's book, Rise of the Fourth Reich, he said, quote, "German scientists could obtain necessary security clearances more easily than could American scientists. Defense contractors looking for new employees to work on classified projects found this aspect of national interest to be particularly advantageous." So by 1957, more than 60 companies were listed on the JIOA's rosters, including Lockheed, W.R. Grace, and Martin Marietta, and so forth. So this is substantiating the process that these insiders said was happening, that as a consequence of the agreements that were reached in the mid-1950s, likely beginning from Holloman Air Force Base, that the US military-industrial complex was being taken over or being infiltrated by German scientists under Operation Paperclip. Now, what gives this a lot more credence is that in 1956, a flying saucer with Nazi insignia and a uniformed crew wearing Nazi era uniforms landed near Honolulu, Hawaii, and they were witnessed, and their craft was photographed by a group of Army intelligence officers. And there's a 20-year Army veteran. He was a master, a command sergeant major at the time, and I think it was Will Willard, as I recall, and he wrote a report about this landing and submitted it to the Air Force, and then nothing happened. And even though he was working with Army intelligence to get information on UFOs, the Air Force came in and shut him down and said, look, you're not supposed to talk about this. We don't want you to work on UFOs anymore. And so he was kind of shunted aside. So Eisenhower was tricked into giving MJ-12 more power. There's Eisenhower shaking hands with Nelson Rockefeller. MJ-12 gains power under a government reorganization plan led by Nelson Rockefeller, who chaired the President Eisenhower's Advisory Committee on Government Organization from 1953 to 1958. So he enabled MJ-12 to manipulate interdepartmental processes to achieve greater autonomy and authority. And President Eisenhower was very upset about this, that he was increasingly cut out of the loop by the power that MJ-12 had accumulated under his watch. Because of this government reorganization, MJ-12 became even more secretive and didn't brief the president on what was going on. One of the first things that MJ-12 arranged was that they arranged for flying saucer projects to be moved from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which of course was under the control of the US Air Force at the time, and moved everything over to the CIA's Area 51 S4 facility. Area 51 was established in 1955 by the CIA and Lockheed's Skunk Works division, and as a site for reverse engineering. So this was one of the first steps, major steps, in removing all of the knowledge about flying saucers and R&D programs designed to reverse engineer them and to develop similar craft for the US military services, to put them in the hands of contractors and the CIA and the MJ-12 community. Now we come back to this whistleblower Cooper, and he gave an interview at I think it was 2013 at the Disclosure Project, at Stephen Bassett's press conference on the citizens' hearing. And this witness said that Eisenhower was betrayed by MJ-12 and CIA, which ignored the chain of command in reporting R&D at S4 in 1958. Now, Vice President Nixon was fully briefed, along with Eisenhower, about MJ-12 operations. So both Eisenhower and Nixon were cut out of the loop by the MJ-12 group, and this insider whistleblower Cooper came in and was part of a team to brief them. So this is what he said in his interview with Richard Dolan just prior to the citizens' hearing. So he said, "We called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give them a personal message. I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, I want you to tell them that they have this coming week to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the 1st Army from Colorado. We're going to go over there and take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. We are going to rip this thing apart." So Eisenhower was very, very upset over being cut out of the loop. And we all know about his famous warning, 1961, about the danger posed by the military-industrial complex. But the backstory to that is that he was very upset by the MJ12 group taking control of the whole subject matter, and of course very upset over the influence of this Fourth Reich element that had reached agreements with the MJ12 group and was slowly infiltrating the United States at the time, or infiltrating the military-industrial complex at the time. So I think the backstory behind Eisenhower's warning was that MJ12 had become too powerful, and that the military-industrial complex was being infiltrated and being taken over by this Fourth Reich element. So Eisenhower told Kennedy about this. I think that this is something I discuss at length in my book, Kennedy's Last Stand, that came out in 2013. And so JFK tried to gain control over the UFO-related projects from the MJ12 group. I detail the different things he did. He was briefed about the German Antarctic presence by Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, who had taken Kennedy to occupy Germany in 1945. So this is one of the things that a lot of people don't know about President Kennedy's background. That is, in 1945, he was a guest of Secretary of the Navy at the time, James Forrestal, who wanted to recruit Kennedy to his personal staff. And he took Kennedy over there. They looked at all of the captured German technologies, and Kennedy had been briefed on everything that the Germans were doing, and he learned about the Germans escaping with some of their most advanced prototypes to South America and to Antarctica. So Kennedy was very aware that the UFOs were either extraterrestrial or German in origin, and he was making a lot of inquiries. And because Kennedy was making all of these inquiries, the MJ12 group were very concerned. The head of the MJ12 group at the time was Alan Dulles, and what he did was that he got an executive committee of the Majestic 12 group comprising 7 people to approve a set of draft directives. These 8 directives who wanted to deal with Kennedy's inquiries into MJ12 operations. And so this was, we know this from a leaked document that Dr. Wood has authenticated, and he believes it's genuine, as do I, as do others such as Larry Holcomb. And I think that this document is really giving us smoking gun evidence of what really did happen during the Kennedy administration. So it says in this document, as you must know, Lancer, Kennedy's secret space secret service code name, has made some inquiries regarding our activities which we cannot allow. Please submit your views no later than October. Your action to this matter is critical to the continuance of the group. So this was very serious. They knew Kennedy was wanting to get control of the UFO topic, and they wanted to deny him access. So they issued a cryptic assassination directive. And in this directive, it said when conditions are not conducive to growth in Washington, the weather is lacking in precipitation, it should be wet. So that's code for, wet works is code for assassination in the intelligence community. So Dr. Wood, as I mentioned, and his son Ryan Wood think that it's an authentic document. And they explain it's an original carbon with an eagle watermark, characteristic of government work, but so far forensic laboratories have been unable to trace it. Although no date is given, its content directly suggests the month of September. The year is estimated to be in the early 1960s and is still under investigation. So they gave it their very highest level of authenticity. So that was put out in 1961, I believe, in September, and that was done by Alan Dulles as he was leaving his job as director of the CIA. On November 12, 1963, Kennedy issued a top secret memorandum to the new director of the CIA, and the subject was on classification review of all UFO intelligence files affecting national security. Now, this document is significant because at the bottom there is some handwriting, and that handwriting is It's from William Colby, who was the CIA station chief in Southeast Asia. And he says that in response to Kennedy's memo to the director of the CIA in 1963, who was John McCone at the time, Colby was responding to McCone's office saying that, well, don't worry about it. Angleton has MJ directive. So there you have a connection between James Jesus Angleton with the assassination directive that was part of the Byrne memo.